All right, everybody, welcome back to Sundays with Pastor Neil. We missed last Sunday. I hope everybody had a great Mother's Day.
Did you kiss your mamas?
Kiss your mamas, hang out with your mamas. I hope you did. If you didn't, well,
shame on you.
You're going to be in trouble anyway. So. But no, we're glad to be back tonight with everybody. We missed everybody last week, even though we don't get to see you in here, at least get to interact with you a little bit and talk to you. And it was a good week off, but we're glad to be back. Glad everything's kind of getting back to normal.
Yes.
Going to be starting back church in a couple weeks, and it'll be a couple weeks period in this. We're going to kind of play it by ear, but we're going to continue to do this. Even once church starts back, we're going to continue to do this and do all that. So tonight, we're going to end our series on the end, which is kind of fitting, the end of the end. But we're going to end our series on Revelation. We're going to talk about a few different things tonight, but the main thing we're going to go over tonight is the numbers involved in Revelation. What numbers mean, what numbers think. But as I was looking over all this stuff and I was thinking, and you sent it to me earlier in the week, and then you sent, we got over this to this afternoon and everything, and I was thinking about numbers all week, like what numbers are important to us, and how we base things on numbers. And man, I tell you, numbers are in everything. I mean, even starting
Social
with
Security.
You start right out the gate with your Social Security number.
That's right.
But then I'm talking about even like as a society, numbers almost control us.
Yes.
Because we even starting at a young age, you worried about making good grades. You got your GPA, you got your SAT scores. Your
some worry about that.
That's some, but you should be worrying about that. Hopefully, if you listen tonight, you should be worrying about that. Walker probably not worried about that, but that's okay. But no. So I mean, all this stuff that you got to worry about, numbers, and then you go on to even your fun life, your pastime, sports. Sports all about numbers. Wilkes knows every number of every player, every stat, every all this kind of stuff. So it's numbers.
I want to go to a Braves game. How much is the ticket?
That's right. We're flooded with this.
Yeah.
And then even as you move into adulthood, you're constantly worrying about how much money I got in my bank account. How much is that going to cost me? How much is okay, sending the kids to camp and doing all this is going to cost me this, it's going to cost me. So
that's right.
Numbers flood our lives, and we're going to talk about the numbers and Revelation and how they correlate with things and do all this. But I was thinking, I said, what would be, as a Christian, what should be a number we're focused on? And you think about, okay, the number of the 12, and you got Jesus feeds the 5,000. Everything, even in the Bible, stories have all these numbers with them, and it's the 144,000, and all this kind of stuff. But I was looking up, and I came across a stat. I said, in the world, there's roughly 7.2 billion people. So that's probably the biggest number in the world of people, of the number we're dealing with. Then of that, about 2.2 billion people identify themselves as Christians. So that's the largest percentage.
That's right.
So okay, we're good there. But then I started thinking, do you know what that leaves? 5 billion people that aren't Christians. So as a Christian, that should be the number we're obsessed with. 5 billion people don't know the love of Jesus Christ. That's good.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, as we're ending this the end section, the end study here, if the end was today, that's 5 billion people that are living an eternity without Christ. So when you start looking at numbers like that, you're thinking, man, that's not good.
Right.
But as churches and as Christians, we focus on these numbers of how many people are in church today.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at views of how many people are watching.
We're getting an offering.
How many people watched our stream today? And then I see on these social media church media manager pages, they're saying, what formula are y'all using to determine your attendance by how many people watch times 2.67, and that gives you the number of people. And we're obsessed with these numbers of how many people are we bringing into church, and that's like we talked about 100 times. Doing things for God is not necessarily a bad thing.
That's
how many people we're bringing in churches, that number we should be focusing on that.
Right.
But in turn, we should be focusing on how many people we bringing out to equip to reach these 5 billion
That's
people.
exactly right.
And that kind of really hit home, and it really kind of upset me, because I'm thinking we're talking about the end of times.
Yeah.
But there's 5 billion people out there.
That's right.
At the end of times hit, and we don't know when it is. We've talked about this. We don't know when it is or when it's going to be or whatever. But when it does, there's 5 billion people that we're going to leave behind.
And it's odd, because I get made fun of a lot about being a old youth pastor in the game. Because you go to youth conferences or whatever, and I'm usually sitting in the room, and I'm old enough to be everybody in there's daddy.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. I would say most of the conversations in that room start off with this question: well, how many do you run?
Yeah.
And I hear that so much, and to be honest with you, it makes me sick.
Yeah.
Because that's what we've judged and what we've governed success on.
That's right.
And I'm just going to say this: if you're a youth pastor and you tuned in tonight, if that's your goal and that's what's happening, shame on you.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to model our ministry and our life and everything after Jesus. And I heard Doug Fields say at a youth conference one time, and I love it: there's not a church that would have kept Jesus employed.
That's right.
He was employed for 3 years. He started with 12. He left with 11. Yeah. He couldn't grow nothing. That's right. That kind of thing. But what he did do was he impacted those 11 to go after the 5 billion. And that's what we don't do. I'll just be honest with you.
No, as church, that's what really kind of struck me. And I know it's not really the topic we're going to talk about tonight, but we're talking about numbers, and that kind of hit me. But I said, as a church, and I'm not saying we don't do it as a church here, and I'm not. This is not a knock on a certain church, but as a church as a whole, we're so consumed with. And you've said in those youth conferences, and you've said in discipleship meetings, and evangelism meetings and all this stuff. And what's the number one thing is, how can we get people in our church? Well, okay, that's great and that's fine, but it should be, how can we take our people that are at our church and reach the people that are not in church? And so, I mean, as you think about numbers, and it really kind of compounds and makes it kind of a pressing issue when we're talking about the end, because if you're not, as a church, willing to go out and reach these people, then you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And as a Christian, and I'm not saying, oh, I got to figure it out, and I'm going out and reaching all these people for Christ, because I'm guilty of it too.
Right, I am too.
I mean, you know, we're guilty of falling into this trap of, as long as I can go to church, as long as we can get people to come to church, if we can get 50 people to watch our stream tonight, we done good. If we can get 100 people to subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Facebook page, or this kind of stuff, and we get caught up in these numbers. But you know what? If we could take one person and reach one person, and that person reaches one person, and all we did was reach one person, we've done more than having 10,000 people sitting in this office and not equipping them with doing anything.
Right.
So that's what really struck me when I started thinking about numbers, and I thought about all this stuff, and I thought about the end of times.
Right.
Well, how can we reach these people? I mean, and
one thing I think we have made this statement, and we talked about it almost every single episode of this, and it's no different tonight. The end is coming.
It's coming.
Not a thing you can do about it.
That's right.
It's just a matter of where you're going to spend eternity. And in that, I'll be honest with you, I know an awful lot of people just in my circle of the world that I walk in that are in that 5 billion.
Yeah.
And what do I do to let them know, hey, this is going to happen.
Yeah. And
this is really going to be here.
And I think that's where we've gone with this study. We've given you like I said, when we started this thing, we said we're not going to go in this in-depth theological, teach you how every significance, and we're going to go over these numbers here in a few minutes, and it's going to enlighten you on a few things that are pretty cool, and some things that are kind of mind-boggling and that kind of stuff. But the real reason we're doing this is to say, look here, it's coming. The end is coming. So either you're equipped and you're ready to you're ready for the end now, and I hope that everybody watching and everybody who's listening is ready to go. But if you're not, get with us, and we're going to tell you how to do it.
That's
but if
exactly
you are, your job is not done when you get yourself right to be the end. Your job is beginning. When you become a Christian, that's not the end all. That's the beginning.
Absolutely.
So hopefully you've got a sense of, understanding in this revelation that if I don't step up the pace too, I'm not doing my part.
Right.
And that's kind of what I've gotten out of it. I mean, not that I didn't already know that, but just reading through it again and reading through Revelation and reading through these things of this is the stuff that's going to happen.
Right.
Man,
in fact, I'm gonna get real. I looked at my phone just for a second there. I'm gonna get real with something and even expose myself. There's somebody that was watching just a while ago that I have been friends with since we were in like T-ball. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm not sure I ever remember not knowing him. And I saw that he was watching, and I'll be honest with you, I think he's involved in church. I know his family is and involved in church, but I don't know personally where he stands. Now I know he's seeing me, but I don't know that kind of thing. And I'm gonna call him out. That kind of thing. Lee Leviner, I miss you, boy. I love you, man. That kind of thing. But where do I really know?
Yeah.
Have I made it a point? Like I said, this is somebody I've known since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Do I really know where they're standing? Do I really know the importance of, look, there's numbers that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Are you going to be in the 2 or the 5?
That's right.
That kind of thing. And I look, man, I love you enough. I want to make sure.
Yeah.
I want to make sure you're part of that too.
But I think probably 2 billion is probably.
I think that's a stretch.
Yeah,
I do too. Because let's just be honest. In fact, y'all know I have a new obsession with TikTok, that kind of thing. But I found one. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up because I don't want to miss. In fact, I'm challenging you guys to go subscribe to this one. Let's see. I want to make sure I got the right one. I'm on the following page, but God Up is what it's called. And it's basically like an FCA thing. In fact, you can see here a special moment from the great Kobe Bryant, where he's talking about God and that kind of thing. And I'm watching all these, and I'm like, man, this is great. I didn't know this guy was a Christian. Yeah. I didn't know this guy was, those kind of things. And you see some, but I mean, you've seen it too. You've been around sports an awful lot. It's nothing anymore. Every single athlete's a Christian. Ask them.
Yeah,
whether they live the lifestyle or not. Well, they're a Christian. Right. Ask them,
Well, and then you get into politics, and the politicians are Christians when they're pandering for the Christian vote, and they're
right.
They're not they're supporting the liquor stores when they're
or
trying
abortion,
to get that vote, or abortion to get that vote.
That's right.
People, but so the 2 billion may be a little bit of a stretch as well, but yes, I mean this is really kind of said, and I feel like I've just doing what we've been doing.
Right.
It's kind of opened me up to hey, there's some things that you're not doing. How you going to get up there and tell somebody else to do it if you're not willing to do it? So it's almost like I've taught myself some of this stuff, and I hope you guys are picking up on this too, that, hey, the end is coming. There's going to be things you've got to do to get ready, but that's not it. Like, if you're not out there actively, I mean, the last thing that Jesus said on this earth before he ascended to heaven was, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I've commanded you to do. Lo, I'm with you always, even to the end. Amen. That's Matthew 28, 19, and 20. That's what we call the Great Commission.
Right.
And you hear all these preachers talk about the Great Commission, and are you living out the Great Commission? Well, that's all fine and dandy to get up there and say, are you living out the Great Commission? But I'm telling you how to do it, but am I really living out the Great Commission?
That's right.
And so that's been a kind of a self-reflection. And like I said, this whole thing, when I was sitting here thinking about all these numbers, and it really hit me hard that, hey, there's 5 billion people, and I'm not talking about unreached people, know, and we've talked about in the end won't come. You've heard all that. The end won't come till everybody's heard and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how, and I'm not telling you to load up the wagons and head to
That's right.
the jungle in Africa.
That's exactly right.
Can you just live your life on your day-to-day basis to where you don't have to sit there and say, man, I didn't know that man was a Christian, or I didn't know so-and-so was a Christian, or, man, did you know so-and-so was a Christian because they was on TV talking about this? I don't want people to look at me and say, man, I didn't know he was a Christian.
Exactly.
Because if you do, and I have led you down that way, I'm sorry.
Right.
And I hope you can forgive me, because that's not my purpose in life. No. And I'm not saying I'm, going to be the best Christian of all time, because that's not going to happen. And but I want you guys to know, hey, not because I get up here and tell you I'm a Christian, but because that you see me do things that say, you know what, I know that I don't know, you can't know anybody's 100% certainty, but I have a good feeling that at the end of the times I'm gonna see Eric at the gates, so that kind of stuff, and that gets into this whole thing. But we'll dive into these numbers and kind of take a look at them, and there's some the numbers are really kind of just cool facts, almost.
That's right.
And we get into these numbers thing, and you see all these numbers, and people play the lottery on numbers because they're, that they're kind important. Of stuff. They're important numbers. And that's kind of what the book of Revelation is. And it's not like we've been saying this whole time, the book of Revelation is not a salvation book.
No.
So these numbers, as far as where you're going to get in salvation, they probably don't play a whole lot of importance in salvation. Right. But they are pretty neat to hear, and it's kind of neat to end up on this. But
it's like every other verse in Revelation's got a number in it.
That's right.
And the thing is, we cannot make these fit into, and this was in here, of a little interpretation. Oh, well, I know what that means. No, you don't. And so it's just out there, and a lot of it is just basically almost food for thought kind of thing as to what do you think it means, how does it fit, and what. But there's a lot of it that the way it works in that you're like, okay, that's odd right there, and it will make you think. And I do think that numbers are important. I mean, why did he tell us those numbers? It has to have significance. There's not a single thing in this book that's in there by accident.
That's right.
So there's some things I don't understand. My mom and I were talking today, and she was like, we were talking about things in there that we don't understand why they're actually there. She was reading about, when Peter approaches him, and they were like, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I thee. And he placed it in their right hand. Why the right hand?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I don't know.
That kind of thing. But he made it a point to tell you that. Yeah. Does it mean something? I'm sure it has some significance. That's why you have to make sure you're right with God. When you get to the end, you can ask Him.
That's right,
you know, that kind of thing. But a lot of these, it's not actually a literal, okay, we've unlocked this code now, and now we're biblical scholars or whatever. That's not going to happen.
That's right.
So a lot of these you can brush off as meaning one thing when they actually mean something totally different. And we only find this out by exploring the Scriptures. And, you know, I said 2 weeks ago, you and I were in here talking, and there's a lot of times that you read something now that means something completely different for you than it did then.
Absolutely.
I mean, I look at my life as a teenager. First of all, I wasn't reading the Bible, but I was still drugged to church and still heard all those things. And there was a lot that I've heard over the course of my life that, you know, reading through Revelation, that's not in there.
Yeah.
A lot of them came in the form of songs.
That's right.
You know, we'll sing songs like they're gospel, and you know, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the song "Stepping on the Clouds." We'll see Jesus rise to meet Him in there. That's not biblical.
That's right.
Nowhere is it biblical.
That's right.
And there's just some things that I am encouraging you. Read this, and I hope over the course of this, the last 3 weeks to a month, that you have actually started reading Revelation and reading through some of it. I mean, there's things that you may unlock. An understanding that you have, it's like, well, I've never looked at it like that. Right. That can help us out. We need that from you. So there were the verses of Numbers that were mentioned. There's quite a few, but I mean, just in the first little bit, Revelation 2:8, 4:4, 5:1, 7:1. These are there are numbers mentioned in all of these, and I encourage you to read these verses. But the numbers that are present in these passages, what are they supposed to mean? And there's cross-references from different commentaries, different Bibles that I've looked at, that kind of thing, or whatever. But, Eric, if you want to start going through some of those.
Yeah, and which this one is kind of cool because it's two.
Yeah.
You know, there were two witnesses. The disciples were sent out 2 by 2. You know, we've heard all that, 2 by 2, fallen silent, you know, all that stuff we've heard and read and all those. But 2 witnesses are required to establish the truth. That's Deuteronomy 17:6, John 8:7, 2 Corinthians 13:1. But 2, and it talks about 2 in the field,
right.
One's gone. So 2 is a number, but 2, this thing where it says 2 witnesses are required to establish truth, and that's almost like that's still relevant today.
Right.
If I hear a story from Neil and I think,
right,
that's kind of a crazy story. Like,
that's
I can't
right.
believe something like that happened.
Yeah.
But then the next day I'm talking to somebody else and they said, did you hear like so-and-so? And they tell the same story. I'm thinking, well, 2 people said it, like
right.
2
that's
different
right.
people that hadn't talked to each other.
Right.
You know, 2 witnesses, 2 different witnesses. And I watch all these, all I do is watch crime shows.
Yep,
I don't know.
I do too.
But
I love them.
But, you know, if they can get a corroborating story from somebody
right.
that corroborates the witness's story, then all of a sudden the witness becomes credible. So 2 is kind of a credibility type number,
right?
Almost, and you know, but it's mentioned in Revelation as a 2 in the field and 1 is gone.
That's right.
And the 2, you know, the 2, all these other 2s and 2s and 2s. So 2 is kind of a neat number,
and I mean that's honestly why I like the 4 Gospels with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're all discussing Jesus and what happened,
right.
But it's like every single one of them, they tell their view of what happened, but there are certain facts that are not.
Yeah, the facts.
You know,
facts.
that's exactly
and
right.
We've talked about that, and me and Stacy talked about that, and some other things, and talking about. You know, you can get up there and you can embellish stories and
that's
you can
right.
do all this, and some people do that, and some people are great at telling stories that they're not lying, but they're vivid
right.
with these stories, and that's almost like in Revelation, and like you said, and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're talking in these parables and these big stories, and,
right?
But the facts remain the facts.
That's right.
A fact is a fact. So
that's right.
You know, that's kind of a cool thing. But then we'll move on here to number 4. The number 4, which would. Typically, it would be used in symbolizing the whole earth. 4 points of a compass: north, south, east, west. The 4 angels standing in the corners, holding the wings back in Revelation 7 and 20 and 8, and then the 4 beasts in Revelation 4. It's just incredibly close to the 4 beasts found in Ezekiel 1.
Yep.
You know, then it's like here we go. Now you go back to that and you cross-reference that, and then it's not the throne room is remarkably similar in the description here that Isaiah has in chapter 6 of Isaiah. So it's like. And it's almost like as I read through these numbers and I see these numbers and it says, okay, 4, if you read in Revelation, it talks about 4, but if you notice, 4 is back in Ezekiel. Okay, well, cool. So I go back and read Ezekiel, then it's like, well, wait a minute, 4 is mentioned in the throne room and back in Isaiah.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, it's almost like Revelation is in there to say, okay, you're at the end of the book, but did you really read what was in here?
That's right.
So I'm going to give you one more chance.
Yep.
To start cross-referencing all this stuff, to go back and catch what you missed.
Exactly.
Because it's like you said, a lot of you read the Bible through year after year, and I know a lot of people don't. I know my dad's does that, and a lot of people read the Bible through year after year. But it's like, okay, you got to the end of the book. Do you really remember what you read back here in Ezekiel and Daniel and all this other stuff? So I'm gonna give you a number. Go look it up somewhere else. So it's kind of cool that you can go back and see that all these books that were written, thousands of years before by different people, and are all the vision of God, are given the same vision that all come back together at the end.
Yep. So, and how did this guy live way back then? Set a groundwork for John to have something from the Spirit to pin down here that's mentioned there.
But it's like the same thing with John. I mean, you got to think John's sitting there thinking like, man, this is very significant. I put this number 4 in there, because I remember reading the book of it from the Revelation of Ezekiel, The number 4. I mean, it's kind of like he puts things in there, and he sees these visions that were from the past too. So it's kind of all comes together. But then as you go on, you got 2, then you got 4, then you got 6, which is typically assigned as a value number to man, as man was created on the 6th day. Which you've got combinations of 6 all in the mark of the beast is 666, which its value of 6 is created a man, which at this point man has become evil because of what happened in the garden. So that number has become an evil number, and you think of 6 and 666, and nobody wants to deal with anything in 666 or a version of that number.
That's right.
So but then after you get through 6, then you come to 7. Okay, 7. I mean, how many times, not even reading Revelation, have you heard 7's God's number?
That's right.
And that is true. I mean, that's but it's mentioned probably the most, 55 times in Revelation, and 7. I've always heard this all my life, and you read it in the Bible, and you read it in Revelation. That creates the completeness, the wholeness. You got number 6 is not quite there.
That's right.
But then you got 7. That's the Lord's number, But in here you got 7 days a week, 7 bowls, 7 trumpets, 7 seals. It's written to the 7 churches, 7 lampstands, 7 scroll, the seals or whatever on the scrolls, that kind of stuff. So that's pretty. Get all that together. That's where you get the 7.
Right.
You go from there, but but it's a pretty 7's always. Hey, always, if you're thinking about something, you're thinking about being there with God, think about a 7.
That's right.
That's kind of cool there. But then we go on to 12, which 12 is probably the most recognizable number because throughout the whole Bible, you're talking about the 12 disciples, the 12 disciples, 12 disciples. That's where we always hear about the 12 disciples, but it's also a number of completeness as well, because of the 12 disciples were the complete group of disciples. Then there's 12 tribes of Israel, which that comes back again, and these other numbers here, they're all tied back into this 12. 12 stars on the crown worn by the woman in Revelation. You got 12 versus Revelation 12:1.
Yeah, I ain't lying.
So that's not really a coincidence either, So that kind of stuff, it kind of goes in. But 12 gates on the New Jerusalem. There's 12 gates there with the 12 tribes of, and then you go to 24, which is 24 thrones, 24 elders. Double 12, you got 12 times 2, which my math's correct, I think so, it was 24. So, that's kind of double that. And then you go into the whole, since the church as a whole referred to as a priesthood, a redeemed people. In the Old Testament, the only tribe of Israel had priests. A redeemed and completed church, all a part of the priesthood, which was in the 12 apostles and the tribes side by side. You get the 24.
Right.
24 thrones, 24 elders, that kind of stuff. Then you get to the 144. And I know we've all heard 144.
That's right.
Which, again, I'm pretty confident that 12 by 12 is 12 times 12 is 144. So you get that, and then you get into the 12,000, which is mentioned in Revelation. So you take 12 and multiply it out, you get the 12,000. Then the big number that we've heard all these years, and it really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me until I got older. Multiple 12, 144,000.
Right.
And that's the complete number of the the Jews that are going to be, the 144,000 are set apart.
Right.
And I used to think that's kind of crazy. Like, I don't understand as a kid, especially growing up, even into the youth, I don't understand. Okay, I understand that that Israel is God's chosen place, God's chosen people. The Israelites were God's chosen people. And you can read back through every story in the Old Testament where the Israelites screwed up and then God bailed them out at the end.
Restoration.
The restoration of the 144. And so it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But as I get older and you start seeing these things, especially in politics and world politics, where Jerusalem is establishing.
Right.
Establishing, they're getting their land back. That's right. It's now the capital of Israel is Jerusalem. So, and my parents, they were lucky enough to go to Jerusalem a couple years ago, and they just talked about how you can't imagine until you walk on that earth, that piece of earth, how special that place is. And, you heard about the Israelites and all this stuff, and you read all these stories, but the 144, how special of a people that is, that God mentions in the Bible multiple times and tells him, these are my chosen people. And we joke and we laugh, these countries that when they do things to the U.S. and we try to do sanctions and we try to do all this stuff, when you mess with Israel, they just wipe you off the face of the earth.
That's exactly
because
right.
They got, and it's like, why in the world would you mess with Israel? Because if you've even read half of this,
that's exactly
you know
right.
that's God's chosen people. So why even mess
right.
with them? So that's a pretty cool. You get to the 144,000, that gets whatever. And then you get to 3.5 years, which is mentioned a couple times. But that two things with the 3.5 years.
Yep.
That is the amount of time that Elijah was cared for by God while on the run. If you haven't read the story of Elijah, I would recommend reading
Very
that.
good. Yep.
Elijah's, that's a good story, and my little nephew, his name's Elijah, and that name brings a lot. And that name, you read about Elijah, and you know that was a true prophet of God. But God cared for him on the run for 3.5 years, which is mentioned back again in Revelation of 3.5 years. And then it's the persecutions shown to have happened or will happen. And you can read that in Daniel 7:25 and 12:7. And if you're looking for a Old Testament version of Revelation, I recommend that you read the book of Daniel, because Daniel has a lot of correlations with Revelation.
That's right.
And that's where he talks about the 3.5 years and that's where we get into this. Okay, has the persecution happened? Is it gonna happen? We don't know. We're not sure. Has it happened back in Jesus' time? And we're not sure about it now. We don't. I mean, but the 3.5 years is a good symbolization. But the sum up all these numbers, 2, 4, 6, 7, 12, the multiples of 12 with 24, 144, 12,000. 144, and then the 3.5 years, you come to this and you say, okay, what do all these numbers mean?
Yeah. Some of y'all like, man, I thought I was skipping math class.
Right,
I'm glad we out of school.
That's right,
math.
but it's like, what does all this mean? And I would like to tell you that I've got it all figured out, but I don't, because we're not really sure, and it's
right.
And that's about the whole book of Revelation.
That's right.
Could these numbers mean something now? We know that the chosen of 144,
right,
144,000,
right.
we know that number has a little bit of significance. We know the number of 7, the completion. We know the number of 666 is going to be the mark of the beast. But does that mean that, you see all these people posting on Facebook that their employees got a key card with all their information on it? Is that the mark of the beast?
Yeah.
You're carrying a credit card in your pocket.
And now the big thing on
is that going to be the mark
Bill
of the
Gates
beast?
is wanting the chip put in everybody.
Chip put in everybody.
Yeah.
I mean,
to see if you've got the vaccines, and now when they come out with the vaccine for the COVID, that you'll have it and it'll be in the chip or whatever.
So who knows? I mean, and who knows if that's even factual or not?
Right.
But the thing is these numbers are in Revelation.
Right.
And they, we can only explain them out so far. We can only explain that 144,000 means 144,000 of the Israelites. Does 144,000 mean something else at the end of times? Probably so.
Eric, I hauled off a bunch of stuff today. To all you stout traditional Church of God folk, I did work on Sunday. I'm sorry, but anyway, I carried like 3 truckloads of stuff to the dump, and I got there and it just, I don't know, it's just one of those moments. In fact, there was a Coach Durecki from Wilson Hall was actually up there, and he goes, "What's up, man?" And we had this conversation there, and we were talking about it. He says, "Man, I'm throwing this away. This was my wife's something or whatever." And and I'm looking at the stuff I'm throwing away, and and all of a sudden it just hit me, and I kind of said a little bit of it in that video, and I thought everything in this whole fenced-in area right here was brand new at one time.
Yep.
Everything in here, somebody paid money for.
Yeah.
Some paid good money for some of the stuff that was in here.
That's right.
And it was special. There's some stuff in here that of sentimental value to somebody else. And I looked at everything in there, and all of a sudden it hit me, and I'm like, because we're talking about the end, and everything has been about, and tonight we're wrapping up a lot of this, but the thing about the end is that we're going to be made new. Mm-hmm. And I all of a sudden I had that realization thing, my little God moment at the dump. I can't imagine that, but and then I thought this is probably where Jesus would be hanging out in the city anyway. But I thought I'm gonna have my hair back. We were at Nana's and my mom's house, and Walker comes out from the back bedroom and says, "Nana, can I have this?" And she's like, "What is it?" And he turns, and it's a picture of me, and he's like laughing and making fun, but I'm looking at the hair that was on my head then compared to what I have now. Not the same, and I look at the things in me that have deteriorated over the years, and I thought there's a lot of times there's people who are thrown to the dump or that the world looks at and says they're no good for anything, and those are usually the ones that God says, I can do something with that.
I can use that.
I can use that. And I thought everything in this earth was new at one time. Garden of Eden, new. Man's messed it all up. And God's going to fix everything. And so we wanted to wrap this up tonight with, at the end of all of this, what happens? At the end of all of this, when Jesus does come back, what happens? At the end of all this, what is going to happen to the world? And the idea of the rapture, there's some weaknesses in it, into what we believe in. And there's some things, like I said earlier, that I've been taught all my life that now you kind of look at and like, I'm not sure that's accurate.
Not how it's going to happen.
I'm not sure that's accurate. And I looked up, what does it mean to evacuate? Which is what actually rapture means. And here's what evacuate means. To remove the contents of, to empty. To discharge from the body as waste, void. To remove something as gas or water from, especially by pumping. To remove especially from a military zone or dangerous area. To withdraw from military occupation of. Vacate, were ordered to evacuate the building. To withdraw from a place in an organized way, especially for protection. This is what one of the definitions of rapture actually means. And so my first thought was, the first part I understand all that, but the one that got me was to withdraw from military occupation of. There's spiritual warfare that goes on here.
Yes.
And we're told, in Revelation, we're told we win.
That's right. And
we know that. So how much better would it be? And I look here, there's a lot to be said for confidence. There are people who just step onto a field of competition or to a court or to whatever, and when they step on with that confidence that, well, I know I'm going to beat you.
That's right.
And it's just, they get annihilated. And then you look at two teams play each other 3 times in the course of a season. Professional football is where it's probably more, basketball. You look at it and you're like, how can they beat this? Or baseball, just say baseball. How can they beat them 12-1 this game and turn around the next game and lose like that? It's the same 2 teams just played. And there's a lot of times squirrels get in our head. That convince us of certain things. I honestly think that's the devil's job in our spiritual warfare. If I can make you think you defeated,
absolutely.
If I can make you think you can't do this, if I can make you think you're not going to win, I got a shot at whooping you.
Well, that's all the devil has.
That's exactly right.
Because we just did this study on Revelation, and we found out that in the end, when it's all said and done, we win. So all he has is to sow that doubt that, hey, yeah, you might win, but times are going to be tough to get in there, and time, this and that kind of stuff. So that doubt and that's all he can do for you.
Right. And see, and this brought on to say, it says, so when you catch what this definition implies, that we're either getting away from something bad or we're getting rid of something undesirable. And within the rapture, the implication is that we're escaping from the bad before it gets really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on a little hunt the last couple of days. We're not out, but we're looking for toilet paper. And it's not like it's desperation, but it's like we were at we were going somewhere. I can't even remember where it was. I was, let me run in here and see. Yeah. And you go in these places and you look, and there's no toilet paper, no flushable adult baby wipes. There's no Clorox. Yeah. There's no hand sanitizer. There's nothing. And I thought, and it's hit me. You see these shelves, and I thought, what's it going to be like for us to we're spoiled. Yeah. We're spoiled country. What if we lived in that third world mindset to where we look and there's no food on the shelves? Yeah. What would that be like? And I'm going to be honest with you. My 2 kids, they flat rotten.
Oh yeah.
They don't, and not nothing against them because I've kind of made them that way, but they've never had to really work for anything. Yeah. It's just kind of been given a little bit. And I thought, what happens if we get to that part? What is going to happen? Or because to be honest with you, I'm not going to say that the other generations were just stupid. I'm not saying that at all. But I just think as we progress along, there's just some different mindsets that begin to set in, and I think spiritually, one of those has set in for me. I mean, this has been kind of opened up some things for me because I'm thinking I'm not going to be snatched up. Yeah. It don't say anywhere in there that I'm not going to be persecuted. In fact, it tells me blessed if I am persecuted. That's right. But we just automatically assume, well, nothing bad's going to happen to me because I'm a Christian. That's right. That's not what it says. And I think a lot of times we try to make ourselves part of the 2 billion in order just to protect ourselves. Yeah. And that's not what it is. That's not what it's about. It's can you stand taking care of it? Why do we exist in the first place? Yeah. Why are we here? Why was Neil made you 50 plus years ago? Let's leave that there. Why was I made to start with? You know, and I'm thinking God brought me about for a purpose. I have a purpose. My purpose is not going to be fulfilled unless I'm trying to help change that 2 to 5 ratio.
That's right.
And that's what's got to happen. And there's an alternative theory to the end of the world. And the thing is, though, what's not up for debate tonight is the end of the world. Yes. We know that there is a God. We know that he's coming back. You know, but this kind of made my head spin. And before some of y'all this watching jump, oh, I can't believe he said it. I've sat down with the pastor. We've gone through a lot of this stuff. And according to Revelation, are we going to live in heaven? Is he coming to get us and taking us up? You know, going past the moon, stars, and the planets. I'm going to go the Milky Way, that old Son of God. I don't believe that's going to happen.
That's right.
I just don't believe that's going to happen. And how do I argue this to you? I don't want to argue with anybody. But when you look at Revelation 21, and I've read this probably 10 times this week, just this chapter. And in the Jewish literature, everything is kind of subjective. It's there. But we're given a few things that we can look at as physical. That's just right there. And the new heavens and the new earth renewed. God showed John a vision of an actual literal city of Jerusalem. And in fact, there's a lot that interpret it, that the church coming as the bride, and it might be a literal city. But there's actually dimensions given for this. Yeah. I mean, you know, you build houses. Yeah. You know, it's one thing for me to say, Eric, build me a house. I don't know that, but you say, okay, well, what you want 20-foot ceilings? You want 8-foot ceilings? You want, you know, normal door frame, 6'8" door frame, whatever. You know, how big do you want this room? How big you want your closet? How big, you know, that kind of thing. See, you understand all that because you're like, I ain't just build you a house, you idiot.
Just go out there and start
exactly
nailing boards together.
Yeah. So I mean, there's things, but there's actually a blueprint that is given for what it's going to be, and it's there's a bunch of literal measurements that are given for this city, and it says it's going to be a perfect cube. Now, when I say cube, I wasn't the best in geometry class. I'm just going to tell you, you know, all that parallelogram and trapezoids and I'm like, who cares? You know, that kind of thing. Man, all I know is that the home plate looks like this. That's all I need. First base is square. I don't need all that stuff. You know, that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't pay attention a lot to that. thank the Lord I had a teacher that realized, okay, he's playing baseball. We got to help him out. You know, got to get that kind of thing. But it didn't prepare me for some of this. But it's given in a cube. And the pastor and I, we were talking about this. So what do you think is going to be? And I think cube.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Square by square by square. You know.
And it's like, okay, if it's the same measurements here, and here, that actually could be a pyramid. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah. You know, so there's a whole lot. It doesn't necessarily tell you what shape. Right. You know, if I tell you I want a 20 by 20 room, that's pretty cut and dry.
That's right.
But, you know, with this is not that way, but there are measurements. There's no lights that zip around saying that they're the body of believers there that's going to tell you what's what, and we're not going to see all that. But there's things in the physical that are actually there. And in fact, it says it's coming down. Mm-hmm. Well, wait a minute.
I thought we were going up.
It's exactly right. And see, and that's my thought. Yeah. That's my thought. And we're not saying that this is, please, you've got to understand. We're just throwing out things for you. There's study this on your own. Allow the Spirit to speak to you. But that's the first thing jumped out to me. Wait a minute, if that's coming down, why am I going there?
Yeah. But I thought I was riding the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. I thought there was a gospel ship of some kind coming to take, that whatever. I hope Ronnie's not driving it with the trailer, but I was just, that kind of thing. But, I've heard this, and I thought, wait a minute. This was my argument, which is why I'm not a Joel Osteen fan. There's some that are. You are, God bless you, but your best life now. If Sumter's my best life of what God had to give me, and I'm already living in my mansion, me and God gonna have some words. That kind of thing. This ain't what I signed up for. That kind of thing. No mansions in heaven where we hang out in the clouds all day long. I don't see that.
Yeah. And we talked about it earlier. We said, how can you get people to understand it? It may be that way. And you say,
it could be. I could be stepping on the clouds. I don't know.
But if you're sitting here saying, I think it's gonna be, I'm going to step on the cloud, I'm going to jump to this cloud, I'm going to jump to this cloud, and when I get to space, I'm going to float up past space, I'm going to go past the Milky Way, and when I get past there, I'm going to be walking down the streets of gold with angel wings and halos, and I'm going to live in a 100,000 square foot mansion, and I'm going to wear crowns and all that stuff, and that may be the way it goes. But if we're willing to believe that, how can we not believe that it could be?
Right.
The Lord renews the earth.
Right.
And we live there with the Lord. I mean,
right.
That's what we're saying. Is this stuff is
right?
And it's almost like when they wrote Revelations, like let's make it crazy so they can say, hey, if we can believe this, why can't we believe it this way?
Right.
Why can't we believe it this way?
And
we don't know.
One thing I read in 21:3, there's no more curse.
Yeah.
But then before, right in that whole passage, it's talking about that there's going to be trees of life. Whoa, wait a minute. The curse came in where? Yeah. At the Garden of Eden. So there's no more curse, but now all of a sudden I've got a tree of life that's bearing 12 crops of fruit. Okay. See, my mind immediately goes to, so is this a new Garden of Eden?
Yeah.
Is this going to be something, because we're told the lion lays down with the lamb, all that entered in where? I don't know. There's not a clear answer, but if the people see God's face as they did in Eden, walking with him daily, I mean, that's what we know. Revelation does not show the church leaving earth to take up residence at the end of it all. It doesn't say that. It doesn't show that. Why would you... And this is just a thought too. Why would you create the earth, and it's never be destroyed by water again? But why would you make a new earth if nothing's going to be here?
And pull everybody off.
Yeah, if it's destroyed, what does it matter? Yeah. And those are just thoughts, just questions. I don't know. There's not an answer for a lot of this. But restored body doesn't mean I have to go there. God can do anything He wants to do, anytime, any place, anywhere.
Absolutely.
So
And that's where we've gone with this whole study as we're kind of wrapping it up now. We're to the end of this study, and we've talked the whole time of, hey, some of this stuff doesn't make sense.
Right.
Some of this stuff we don't understand, and some of this stuff we may see this way, and you may see a different way.
That's right.
That's okay. You like you said, read the book.
Right.
Read the book and let it encourage you to study other books of the Bible as well, and let it encourage your spirit to be open to different things and to what I may have heard my whole life growing up in a Southern Baptist church,
right?
Singing old gospel hymns, that may not be the gospel.
That's exactly right.
It may be, but we don't know. And so be open to that, and be open to what, things may change and things may do, but let it, if it doesn't do anything else, and if you say, and you can use it to say, I'm going to prove Neil and Eric wrong, read the Bible and prove us wrong.
Right, absolutely.
Like, if you can dig it out and prove us wrong, we're not going to be upset with you.
Absolutely not.
If we've spurned you to do it,
that's
to
right.
us, I'm okay with that too, because I'm good with learning anything I can learn. But take the time and take the initiative to sit down and say, I'm going to cross-reference these numbers. I'm going to cross-reference these end-of-time scenarios and look back and let the Spirit lead you to where you think, and you know what? If I'm sitting here saying, you know what, I think maybe that it's going to come back down to earth. And when the trumpet sounds and I bounce from cloud to cloud and I get to heaven, I'm going to say, well, I guess I was wrong.
That's exactly right.
And I'm okay with that too. I'm okay either way. But
and see, and that kind of what wraps this whole thing up is in the end, doesn't matter.
That's absolute.
In the end, if you know Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, you've done your best to lead people to Him. You have declared the blood of Christ over your life, and you have given a testimony. Yep. That's what makes you overcome. If we've done any of those things, in the end, it doesn't matter. Whether you agree with this theory, this opinion, that opinion, this view, that view, none of that matters. It doesn't take your salvation away from you at all. We said this every single time. You said it again tonight before we started. This is not a salvation book. Yeah. This is what happens as a result of your salvation. And so my challenge to you, we leave you with this tonight, is this. If you do not know Him, please make that right.
And I've heard it time and time again, and I used to think it's so cheesy. And the older I get, the less cheesy these old cliches were going.
Oh, amen.
If you drove out of this building tonight and you were in a car wreck and you didn't know Jesus, and don't leave this building tonight without. And I used to think, man, these pastors are up there begging, like, okay, we get it, like we understand, but we've come to the end of the end, and we know the end is coming. So yes, I'm going to be cheesy right along with them. If you don't know Jesus, and you're listening to this tonight, do not close this browser out without taking that next step and taking that deep relationship. And if you need to call me or Neil, if you don't have our numbers, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and I promise you that we will not broadcast this.
No.
And we aren't going to shame. You can private message us. You can message our channels, whatever. We're not here to embarrass anybody and do all that stuff. But I'm telling you that, and that's going back to the numbers, 5 billion people. It really almost broke my heart when I was thinking about that this afternoon. Of 5 billion people if we all go out of here tonight and the trumpet sounds, and whether the Lord comes down here or we bouncing on clouds and we laughing about dancing past the Milky Way. That's right. But either way it happens, there's going to be 5 billion people that's going the other way. Whichever way we going, they going the other way.
That's right.
So don't be a part of that. Don't finish off this without, if you're saying, hey man, I ain't got a clue what y'all talking about and I don't understand it, but I know at the end I want to be on Jesus' team. Let us know. We're here for you.
Absolutely.
Anything we can do. I know Neil is, because I know he answers my phone at crazy times, and so anything like that we can do for you, let us know.
That's exactly right. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much that we don't have to understand all this. We just have to trust you. And God, I pray that you would help us to give our lives to you in full submission to what you have for us, the plan, the purpose that you have for our lives. God, if there was someone that was watching tonight that is not sure where they stand with you, Holy Spirit, I pray that you would do the work in them. I pray that they would make you Jesus, Lord and Savior of their life before they close their eyes tonight. God, we know that the end is coming soon. We know that you are coming back. And God, I pray that you would help us to find ourselves ready. We love you. We thank you for all things. It's in your name we live and we pray. Amen. See you guys Wednesday night at 8 o'clock on our stand page or our YouTube channel. God bless you.